When we think of the major advancements in electronics, our minds are typically drawn to faster processors, power-hungry AI systems, and tiny supercomputers that fit in our pockets. Sometimes, though, the most significant changes occur to the components we often take for granted, like connectors. Join us for today's discussion of the revolutionary USB Type-C to learn more about the importance of its adoption as a standard and the many options available in connector configurations, pin counts, power, and more. Welcome to Tech Chat, sponsored by our friends at Mouser Electronics. On Tech Chat, we meet with engineering experts to learn about the latest technical innovations that are shaping and reshaping our world. Today, I'm happy to welcome Richard Clark, Global Distribution Manager at GCT. Welcome to Tech Chat, Richard.
Thank you, Dale. Great to be here.
I'm looking forward to our discussion today, and so why don't you get us started?
Okay, yeah, great. So today I'm looking to introduce GCT to a wider engineering community, and in particular focus on our range of USB Type-C products, especially as the need grows for this transition to an increasingly popular and very capable I/O interface. So I'd like to just maybe start with talking about who we are. GCT, or Global Connector Technology, to give us our full name. We're a manufacturer of high-quality interconnect products. We've been in the business for over 35 years. Still privately owned, debt-free company. We have our origins and headquarters in the UK, but have sales, product development, and engineering facilities both in Asia and the US. Today, we remain an engineering-led organization that primarily focuses on meeting the needs of the design engineer and then trying to excel in demand fulfillment. Whilst we're a relatively small company, we are growing rapidly, as demonstrated in this picture of our new headquarters building, which we hope to move into next month.
Well, that's an exciting time for you guys. It's always interesting to learn about new companies that are really not new. They've been around here for 30 years, so that's impressive.
Yeah, a lot of experience within the organization for sure. GCT started out primarily with board-to-board products, which incidentally is still an important part of our business today, before expanding into memory card connectors and other I/O products, as well as custom connectors and custom cable assembly. However, for some time, USB has been our main focus, and over the past few years, our resources have primarily been channeled towards building a market-leading USB Type-C portfolio, which is really what I want to talk in detail about today. We've developed the tagline, leading the charge, and hopefully the rationale behind this will make more sense as we go through the presentation material. The development and evolution of USB has probably been covered many, many times over in various podcasts and presentations, but I'm old enough to remember the excitement of plug and play and the attraction of a common interface for your mouse, keyboard, and gaming controller in the days when everybody used to have a desktop PC. Throughout the various iterations, the data transmission speeds and power handling capabilities have for sure improved, but today we're reaching a stage where finally, in USB Type-C, we have a connector solution that is both universally acceptable and capable of meeting past, current, and future needs. However, there are many customers out there still using older technology for their I/O requirements, and these need to make the journey across to USB Type-C.
Now, Richard, saying it addresses the future needs, that's a pretty bold claim. What makes you think that it's going to meet the future needs for us in the connector world?
Well, I think the the capabilities, the performance of the interface will surely develop going forward, constantly changing, constantly new standards. But I think the actual basic interface, the hardware, if you like, the shell, the form of that connector interface is really going to be around for a good period of time.
Interesting.
One of the things that really is driving the change or the need for people to change is soon to be a legal requirement in some places. We all have a drawer at home packed with chargers of all shapes and sizes that have accumulated over the years from mobile phones, gaming devices, sat-navs and laptops, etc. The European Union has determined that for consumer and environmental reasons, this electronic wastage has to stop, and legislation has therefore been introduced, effective from the 28th of December 2024, that all mobile phones and small portable devices, cameras, tablets, headphones, etc., must utilise a common charger. And USB Type-C has been selected as the charging connector interface. In 2026, this legislation expands even further to include larger devices such as laptops, etc. Whilst presently this is only for the EU, it will in time surely expand beyond its borders, and we already see the likes of Apple moving from the Lightning connector to USB Type-C in their latest devices. And so really, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Similar legislation will surely follow elsewhere, and already we see India is moving in this direction.
So do you think we're at a point now, because you mentioned Apple adopting it as their standard and now, being forced from the EU, that really more legislation isn't going to matter because it's become the de facto standard for the world moving forward?
Probably, yeah. I think you just needed somebody to take that plunge, and the plunge wasn't primarily to promote Type-C, it was to reduce the wastage, to do something for the environment, to get rid of all these chargers, all these various chargers. I've got at least 2 drawers full, never mind one, but at least 2 drawers full that I've collected, from my Ericsson mobile phone, my Nokia, all the way through Blackberries, you name it, everybody's had them. So that was the main real driver for the European Union, that and also trying to simplify it from a consumer benefit perspective as well. So I think it really just took somebody to stand up and be counted, if you like, and I'm sure the rest of the world will follow on. It's a natural progression, I think.
I think so too, yeah.
I mentioned before that USB Type-C is the first truly universal connector, and nowhere is this more clearly demonstrated than by its reversible nature as shown in the mating cable animation. We see opportunity here in the medical markets and other markets where the customer base is predominantly elderly and who struggle with connector polarization. Even after 30 years in the connector industry, I still occasionally try to make a full size or a micro USB the wrong way around. People are becoming increasingly familiar with what USB-C looks like as an external interface, but behind the scenes there are many different configurations, most of which can be found in the GCT portfolio. Horizontal, flag, vertical, and now elevated orientations, through-hole, surface mount, or hybrid terminations, and top, edge, or mid-mount positions.
Now, mid-mount is an interesting one to me because it kind of looks like an edge, but it's not. So where are mid-mount plugs used?
Really, where the application demands a very tight aperture, where there really isn't much space above the PCB. So you're dropping the connector effectively into the PCB. The bottom of the connector hangs out underneath the PCB. You get different levels of what we call offset, depending on how much you step the connector down from the surface mount level down to the underside of the connector. That's the critical dimension from where the surface mount contacts are down to the bottom edge of the connector. So you step it down. There's various offsets available, but it's really where you're constantly fighting for an application where there really just isn't much space either side of the PCB.
Oh, okay. So it's mid, meaning kind of middle of the PCB itself.
Absolutely, yes. As opposed to an edge connector, which is either straddle mounted onto the edge of the board or really sitting over the edge, like one of the ones we've got in our portfolio. During the course of our chat today, we'll focus on 4 main aspects that GCT seeks to address within its USB Type-C product range: data and power-only charging, high reliability, power delivery capability, and harsh environments. GCT has developed its USB Type-C portfolio around 3 main product configurations, namely 6-position for power-only charging, 16-position for power and data transmission to USB 2.0, and 24-position for power and data transmission to USB 3.2 Gen 2. So let's look at each of these more closely. GCT consider that today some 60% of micro USBs are used in applications where the interface is purely used for charging, i.e. there's no data being transferred. To transition such customers across to USB Type-C generally requires a cost-neutral solution. Since the customer has no need for a speed upside, we are able to realize this by removing all but the contacts associated with power, and in doing so, creating a 6-pin USB charging connector. This is a particular focus area for GCT and where we are clearly leading the charge. Our range includes horizontal and vertical receptacles, top and mid-mount types, and even a fully surface mount version. USB 4135 it's called, which I'm proud to say has its origins in Scotland, and I like to refer to it as the Mac-C. We also offer a really cool 6-way vertical plug, USB 4180, which has the internal latches removed to allow for minimum contact retention forces. Now this is something completely alien to us connector guys, but is ideal for charging headphones in a cradle, or in the application for which it was particularly designed, to allow a child's toy to be charged than for a 5-year-old child to be able to lift that toy easily out of the charging cradle.
So, Richard, this really highlights something really interesting to me about USB-C is we think of it as a single standard, but because there's so many different ways it can be used and so many different ways that it supports different applications, that it helps feed that ability that you talked about before of meeting future needs.
Absolutely. It is the quintessential versatile connector, right? It can charge, it can move data, it can come vertical, horizontal, be on a flag type arrangement. It is so flexible and versatile. It can be used in places you would just never imagine. It's a brilliant interface that you can connect to, as I showed earlier, in a reverse nature, so you can mate with it effectively blindly. The opportunities are endless.
That's fascinating.
So moving on to the next in our series, for customers who also have a requirement to move data, but perhaps only occasionally, say for programming purposes or for data transfer that's not at particularly high speeds. For example, the other 40% of micro USB users, we have a 16-position USB Type-C range. Again, horizontal and vertical receptacles, top and mid-mount types, available in through-hole and fully surface mount versions. All these parts are rated to 5 amps at 48 volts, giving a maximum 240 watt power capability in line with the latest USB power delivery specification, which is something we'll discuss in a little bit more further in the presentation. We also have an elevated receptacle, which you can see near the top of the picture there, USB 4800, which enables an aesthetically pleasing panel design when used alongside full-size USB Type-A receptacles, as both parts share a common center line. Where even higher speeds are necessary, 24-position USB Type-Cs are generally required, offering USB 3.2 Gen 2 and thus 10 gigabytes per second transfer rates. A variety of configurations are available: horizontal and vertical receptacles, vertical and edge mount plugs, and top and mid-mount configurations. Surface mount and hybrid terminations are available, and all parts are again rated to 5 amps at 48 volts, supporting 240 watts power delivery capability. Additionally, we have a flag type USB 4200, which is available and is great for use when PCB real estate is really limited. Again, showing the versatility of this connector family.
So what happens, Richard, when I insert a 24-pin plug into a 16 or 6-pin connector? When I mate those together, you've got different capabilities, but the plug all looks the same.
The plug all looks the same, and that's why you don't really see 16-way plugs. It's not really worth producing a 16-way plug. You can use the 24-way one. Just simply the contacts on the plug will not mate. So when we have a 24-way plug that mates with a 16-way receptacle, there are contacts that are surplus within the 24-way plug, i.e. there is no contact within the 16-way connector for it to mate with. So they just are dormant, if you like. When it mates with a 24-way, clearly all the contacts come together and it allows data to flow at a much faster rate. It's as simple as that.
So then the connection is recognized and there's some kind of like handshaking to say, okay, we've got a 24 to a 16 or 24 to 24. So the hardware behind the scenes can then set up the data rates and all those things.
Absolutely. That's one of the real things, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later with USB, is that ability to connect, recognize, communicate, negotiate between interfaces. When the two are connected, they know who they're dealing with. is the way I would explain it. With any vertical connector, and particularly those that are narrow in body and subject to external user-induced forces, the potential weak point is typically at the base, where the loads are transferred and concentrated. At the end of the day, it's simple mechanics. Using experience gained from our market-leading position on vertical micro-USB products, GCT have launched a range of next-generation vertical USB Type-C connectors, available in 6, 16, and 24 positions. All of these feature a custom high-temperature base with not one, but 2 locating pegs, and 4 through-hole shell stakes, which are available in 3 different lengths to cater for varying PCB thicknesses. We believe that this package of features gives a best-in-class solution for vertical USB-C applications. At the risk of breaking into song, remember when considering your next vertical USB Type-C connector, it's all about the base. How often have you tried to charge your device, for instance, at the airport or on a train, only to finding that the charging port was broken? Charging usually means high cycle usage, and so mating cycle reliability is critical. GCT have tested and approved a number of USB Type-C connectors for 20,000 mating cycles, which is 2x the industry standard. Like quality, GCT believe that you should not have to pay extra for a reliable product, and so 20,000 mating cycles comes as standard on all relevant connector families. USB power delivery is a fast charging technology based on USB Type-C standard, which recognizes, communicates with the connected device, and negotiates the required power, which based on the latest protocol standard can be as high as 240 watts. This greatly opens up the opportunity to charge in a much wider range of applications and on devices including laptops. However, to enable that full charging potential to be realized, a critical element in the chain is having a USB Type-C connector capable of handling such power levels. GCT has tested and approved all active 16 and 24 position USB Type-C products to 5 amps at 48 volts, thus enabling 240 watts of power to be delivered.
I've been seeing that USB PD has been moving beyond the consumer goods and into some more industrial applications. Are there any interesting or maybe even surprising places where you're seeing USB power delivery being used?
Power delivery is still relatively in its infancy. It's, the way I look at it is I'm no different from most other people. In the bottom of my rucksack, I've got a cable that I bought from Walmart, right? It doesn't allow me to do 240 watts, right? That's going to be it. The whole system really has to come together to be able to do 240 watts. And most people are not making use of that at this point in time. Having a connector that's capable of it means effectively if you're handling a lower power, is well within the range of the connector. You've got no heat building. We've all seen chargers over the years. When you touch them, you think, oh, that's getting warm, right? So a connector that's capable of a much higher level of power can deal with it easily. For sure, in the fullness of time, 240 watts with the right architecture around it, the right infrastructure will become commonplace. And I think the legislation that's driving towards charging laptops in 2026 will be the next kind of step that we'll see us down that road. But today, it's still really, I think, in its infancy at the top levels.
Okay, thanks. That makes a lot of sense.
One of my colleagues makes great fun of my Scottish accent every time I discuss this topic. So for the benefit of all those Trekkies out there, Captain, we're at maximum power, but with no problem the connectors can handle it. When we see some other suppliers combining 240 watts power delivery with USB 4, but really when you combine a powerful connector with a fast connector, you invariably end up with a very expensive connector. We tend to call it USB 4 bucks. Today, the majority of customers do not require such a combination, and at GCT, we believe in maximum power at minimum cost. Therefore, all our active 16 and 24 position products have 240 watts power capability as standard. Maximize your power, minimize your cost. Whether it be outdoors, in the home, or on the factory floor, users are now expecting to always maintain connectivity. And so Interconnect, more than ever, has to step up and be capable of functioning in a variety of increasingly harsh environments. USB Type-C is no exception in this regard, and at GCT, we've developed IP-rated products which are 100% tested before they leave the factory. Most outdoor users will simply want to charge their mobiles or power their sat-nav when they're out on their mountain bike or whatever. Few will want or even need to move data. And so for GCT, the obvious starting point for our IP-rated USB Type-C range was a 6-position charging connector. USB 4715 is available in a mid-mount configuration and is sealed and IP-rated in both the mated and unmated condition. The addition of a separate gasket extends the sealing to the device panel or chassis. Achieving a sealed USB Type-C is really pretty challenging, and GCT considered and tested many variants before settling on this design. But in doing so, we're entirely confident that it's sealed and will stay sealed. But don't just take our word for it. Check out the independent test reports on Mouser.com. Of course, the next obvious progression is to enable data transfer in harsh environments, and to support this, GCT have recently launched 2 16-way IP-rated products. USB 4720, which is a mid-mount, and USB 4730, which is a horizontal top mount. Both parts are IP67 rated and sealed in both the mated and unmated conditions, with external gaskets to enable sealing to the device panel chassis. Here there's a slight difference between the two parts. USB 4720 has a permanently fitted liquid injection molded or LIM gasket, which is capable of withstanding IRE flow soldering, whereas USB 4730 has a removable gasket similar to that on the 6th position product we viewed a few minutes ago. Parts which feature removable seals can be bought both with the seal included as a kit or separately. This aspect is particularly useful if the PCB assembly and final box build happens in different locations. Both 16 position parts are rated to 5 amps at 48 volts for 240 watts power delivery and have been tested and approved for 20,000 mating cycles, twice the industry standard. Again, like all our GCT IP rated products, these are 100% tested during production and are validated by independent test reports to confirm sealing performance.
So as we near the end of today's Tech Chat, Richard, are there any key takeaways you'd like to share with our audience, based upon what we've talked about today, but also just on your years of experience in the industry?
Sure. To me, it's increasingly clear that USB Type-C is going to be the primary I/O for consumer electronics for the foreseeable future. For sure, there will likely be further developments, but the basic interface is certainly to remain the foundation for years to come. GCT has, on the back of years of experience with both full-size and micro-USB, developed a market-leading portfolio of USB-C products. It's simply what we do. Our USB Type-C portfolio is still being further developed and additional variants are in our MPI roadmap. These will continue to be rich in features and benefits to help design engineers and customers achieve the solutions and levels of performance that they desire. However, offering flexibility, performance, and reliability doesn't need to equate to increased costs. As an engineering-led organization, performance and reliability to specification is non-negotiable. And nowhere is this more clearly demonstrated than across our waterproof connector range. Sealed and staying sealed is our absolute commitment. Finally, you need partners. And we work very close with our key partners like Mouser Electronics to ensure that engineers can easily access the technical information they require to make formal decisions. Drawings, specifications, 3D models, test reports, etc. And then we complement that with available to sell inventory to support prototype and early production builds.
Well, thanks, Richard, for that excellent presentation. Really appreciated it.
Thanks, Dale, for providing the opportunity to chat today. And I'd just like to give a quick shout out to my colleagues, Carly Simiako and Mark Tia, for their great work in developing the presentation material. Remember, for USB Type-C, think GCT.
And before we sign off today, we want to thank our sponsor, Mouser Electronics. If you're looking to purchase any of these great GCT products, please head over to Mouser.com to help them continue to support educational presentations just like this one. And join us again next time on Tech Chat, where we chat with the leading technical experts like Richard Clark from industry-leading innovators like GCT, who are changing our world every day.